I want to continue this conversation with Stanford neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman and author and psychoanalyst Dr. James Hollis. Dr. Hollis, I want to bring you in because I wonder what your thoughts are as we're talking about the importance of introspection and really finding your true path and your authentic self. How you do that, how you can do that when you have the use of phones and social media and these studies showing the impact that they have had on younger generations, potentially making them more prone to anxiety, depression, and in some cases, suicide. I wonder what you say to that. What advice you might have, Dr. Hollis, in this ecosphere of information overload that I know I experience every day?
Of course, and one of the things that we've realized is the more connected we are electronically, the less we're really talking to each other. People yell at each other online, but they're not actually sharing what their reality is. Men are afraid of connecting with another man because they're always afraid of being shamed in some way or judged by another person. And so the big test for any man, first of all, is to get conscious and begin to examine their life and ask where their choices are coming from and where are they getting their orders from somebody who's making a lot of noise out there or from someone who is able to help them access their inner reality. And then secondly, to be willing to share that with another man. It's often easier to share it with women for the simple reason they do that routinely. For men, that means risking exposure, becoming vulnerable, opening to another man and a man. And of course, if you don't do that, it enhances the isolation and the self-shaming even more. That's why we have a whole youth culture of living through video games, which is not real. It's distraction, pornography, and for pot and other drugs, because it's an avoidance of stepping into the reality of one's own journey and being conscious and taking responsibility for how one is conducting one's life and what one's behaviors are in service to.
Dr. Huberman, what is your take on that as a neuroscientist from that perspective and what this information overload, social media, et cetera, does to our brains?
Yeah, well, I personally hold the strong belief that one of the core aspects of the human brain, but in particular the male brain, if I may, is to create action at a distance. This is not to say that women don't do this, right? They are interested in this and can be extremely proficient in this as well. But there's a kind of fascination among many, not all, but many boys and men about creating action at a distance. And this is fundamental to human evolution, from everything from sure weaponry, but also putting new music into the world, putting new technology into the world, putting knowledge into the world. Obviously, social media allows for action at a distance, but through language and words, and sometimes video action and things of that sort. So we've taken this, what I think is an innate human drive for creating action at a distance, and obviously the further and the more visible that creates a certain reward in the human brain reward pathways involving dopamine and other neurotransmitters. So, you think about a generation of people who are raised doing this, where one of the primary ways that they get social validation or that they can express themselves literally is through action at a distance, through words written with their thumbs. Very, very different than anything that happened prior to 20 years ago or 15 years ago. So what's happened, however, is that I think we've become more divorced from action at a distance in the physical world. And now this could be a hike, right? This doesn't have to be throwing a rock to kill something. I'm not trying to be primitive with this, but anytime we see a technology such as social media, any technology whatsoever, that technology is always going to be played out through neural circuits in our brain and body that have existed for hundreds of thousands of years, right? That evolved over millions of years and thousands of years. So, this is why there's a very key point here, which is that the reward pathways that, yes, involve dopamine, that make us feel good, right? Reward can be good, reward can be bad. Anytime that you can achieve reward without having effort prior to it, it's dangerous. Drugs of abuse, methamphetamine, cocaine, online gambling, abundance of pornography. Anytime that you can achieve these dopamine releases without effort prior to it, you run the risk of, yes, addiction, compulsion. These are different things, right? Habit, right? It's not always addiction. It can be compulsion, or something could merely be habit forming. But one of the things that I've really emphasized on the podcast is that we need to think about where we're getting these so-called dopamine hits or reward without effort coming prior to it. And I think social media gives that very easily. Now, I use social media to teach. I think they're healthy uses of social media.
Right.
Healthy use of social media, in my mind, would include the accessing of mentors that you couldn't access in your close proximity. And so, but I'd like people to understand this and just look at it in their own lives. Any time that you are achieving reward without effort prior, you run the risk of creating mental or physical disease. I mean, we've essentially
That's
created
so
that in the
important.
food system. We create it in the notions of sexuality. And here I'm not here to
Right.
disparage, necessarily even all pornography or all sports gambling, but I'm just saying that these are slippery slopes because of this lack of effort required to achieve the dopamine hit prior to it.
You're approaching this from a scientific standpoint, and that's what's so fascinating
right.
about the,
I can order my food and not go pick it up, right? You eliminate a key step. It might seem like a minor step, but over time, you wonder why we're so abundant in calories and so deficient in health, for instance.
Well, and I think about that as a mom with my kids. Like, that's something really important to think about. Wow, what a fascinating, interesting conversation. I learned a lot from this. Dr. Huberman from the Huberman Lab podcast, thank you for your time. Dr. Hollis, thank you. You have had a profound impact on my life. After my mom died, I read your book, Living an Examined Life, and the second half of life.